Right, good afternoon everyone, and thank you for joining us. You are here today for the j2e using j2e in Key Stage 1 webinar for C2K. So thank you very much for giving up this hour to attend this webinar. We've still got a few people sort of sneaking in the back door. So we'll make it a slow, easy start whilst we're just waiting for people to come in and get themselves comfortable. So my name is Nikki Kimball. I have run all the webinars so far for C2K. I'm the educational consultant here at j2e. So my background, I was a teacher for the best part of 10 years. I taught at various SEND provisions, mostly students with ASD and additional needs. And I've also done some local authority consultancy work before joining j2e. I'm joined in the background by some very able assistants. I've got Danny Young, who is our MD, and I've also got Paul Wright, who is going to be part of my maternity cover because I will be going off over the summer to take on a much harder job for 9 months before I return. So if you have any questions, you can direct those at Paul. So let's make a start. So today's session is scheduled for a 4:30 finish. I will try and be quite strict about that. I know how precious your time is as a teacher. We have muted you now. We have got a slightly smaller group of teachers attending. So we are going to allow you to unmute if you would like to. So you can ask questions as we go along. Now, I am going to also offer up a Q&A session at the end, so you'll be more than welcome to unmute and ask questions during that session as well. Now, if you don't feel brave enough to unmute, you can always ask questions via the chat. So actually, if you could, instead of direct message J2 support, if you could message Paul, who is going to send out a message just to prompt you, he will be able to answer any questions that you have about j2e, whether it's something I'm talking about or whether it's something completely different that you've just thought of. All of these sessions are being recorded, so today's session is currently being recorded, and we are going to make those available to you. So just to show you where those are, we've recorded all of our webinars so far, and they can be found on our j2e website. So if you visit www.j2e.com/news/webinars C2K, that will take you to this site here. So on this site, you will be able to access all of our previous webinars as well. So if you haven't been able to attend all of our webinars, I have done a number of them now. So if you would like to, you can access them. They're all up between 45 minutes and an hour long. So we've got our introductory session, foundation stage, SEN, and we also did a session for Irish medium schools. This webinar will be available by the end of the week, so you can either refer back to it or refer colleagues if you feel that it would be useful. Now we have got a few more webinars coming up. We've got Key Stage 2 webinars starting next week. Now that's filling up quite quickly. And we've also got a new webinar series that we've introduced called Quick Bites. And the purpose of that is that you are going to be able to access 15-minute webinars. So they really are short, sharp snacks that you can dip into, and they will be tool specific. So if you have a look at these are just the ones that we've got until the end of the summer holidays. And we'll be putting more on come September. And those will be sort of being put up soon. So if you see any of these, please book your space there. Right, okay. Today's session, we are going to be looking at how you access j2e. We're going to be having a think about the using ICT curriculum and how j2e fits into that. We're going to be looking at using j2e in a SEA task, so very much a unit of work. We're going to focus on how you could deliver a unit of work using the Key Stage 1 specific tools that we have available. We're going to have a think about online communication, because I know that's a big focus now for SEA, and getting kids used to using emails and online communication and instant messaging, that kind of thing. Hopefully we're going to have enough time to have a quick look at J2 Blast, specifically Spell Blast. And then, as I've said, we're going to do a Q&A session at the end. And then I will signpost you about where you can access some further support as well. Right, let's get into it then. So how do you access j2e? So j2e is a web-based learning platform. It's designed for education. So it's designed for learners and teachers, unlike some softwares that might be being used during lockdown and education. That was designed for business and shoehorned into education, but that's a whole different issue. So you can access it using any networked device. So anything that links up to a Wi-Fi, so Windows, PCs, laptops, tablets, iPhones, smartphones, Chromebooks, we can sort of be accessed through any of those. The platform is built around a cloud-based storage area. So much like your Google Drive or your OneDrive, we have a similar thing called My Files, which we'll show you in a second. It has an easy drag and drop cloud-based file storage, which has unlimited capacity. So you can put as many files in there as you want and you will never, ever fill it. As well as that, the file size is unlimited. So you could put giant videos in there if you wanted to, and it will always accommodate that. Any file that you add is easy to share and collaborate with other users, so students, colleagues, classes, groups, or the whole school if you wanted to. Now, in terms of accessing with C2K specifically, there's two ways of accessing j2e. So you can go via C2K, so via your My School login. If you go to Launchpad, View All, and there's an online learning tab, as you can see here, and we can be found here. Now, alternatively, if you want to bypass C2K, but still use your C2K login, you can go via j2e.com, and there will be a button for the EA there. You can click that, use your C2K login, and that will log you straight into the Launchpad. Now, there's also a simplified logging in process if you wanted to use it with your students. So we can generate QR codes for your students so they can just scan these QR codes and it will log them in straight away. One of the main issues I always find with the younger students is the logging in process. It is a bit of a barrier. It often used to take me 15 minutes of my computing lesson just getting the students logged into what I wanted them to use. So this could be a solution if you're finding that is a problem in your classroom at the moment. So creating these login cards is pretty simple in itself. So this is the Launchpad. So when you log in, this is where you will land. It's often called J2 Launch, J2 Launchpad, or just the Launchpad. And this is the home page, basically. And you'll see we've got all of our j2e tools here, some of which we're going to have a look at in a second. Now, there are some teacher-specific tools, specifically the pupil files area and the J2 dashboard and manage users areas. So your students won't have access to these at all, but you as a teacher will do. So to generate those QR codes, we're going to go to J2 dashboard, which is down here. And this is kind of what we call the back end or the admin side of the site. Okay, so we can tailor different things here. We can generate our own teaching groups if we want to. So you can create smaller groups for your students, so intervention groups maybe. We can also limit what children see on the Launchpad. But for the QR code, what we're going to do is we're going to go to Manage Users, which is here. And this will showcase all of your students. Now, because you're accessing us through C2K, this will be auto-provisioned. You don't need to worry about adding students in, making sure that they're in the same classes, because the data is pulled from the C2K parent site, so that will all be done for you. But what we can do is we can select a student if we want to, or we can do this as a whole class. So if you wanted just one QR code for a student, you can tick the box and then press the QR code. If you want to generate QR codes for the whole class, we just press the QR code button, which is there. Once we do that, we can then select a class. So let's go for class 1, for example. We're going to use generate user login code. So this button here on the left, and that will generate your whole your whole class with their QR code. So you can see here, each student will have a QR code of their own. Now what I can do is I can grab a mobile device, so a tablet or a phone. These work with webcams as well, so you can use it with laptops. As long as it's got a webcam attached to it, this will work as well. We just scan that. There we go. And that has logged my students straight in without having to add in their username and password. So it can be a very, very useful tool, especially if you just have maybe a 45-minute lesson and you just want to get the tablets out quickly and start some work straight away. That will reduce that time for you. Right, how does j2e fit into your Northern Ireland using ICT curriculum? A brilliant curriculum, I have to say. So we have your very familiar 5 E's. So what I've done is I have just mapped out some of the tools that are specific to Key Stage 1 and how they fit into the different E's here. So starting with Explore, we've got things like J2 Code and J2 Data, which are very much part of your Explore 2. So, thinking about how algorithms work, debugging, coding, that kind of thing. We've also got the Explore research side of things. So we'll be having a look at J2 Launch, how we can create our own tiles, J2 Homework, so how we can be specific about the tasks that we want our students to complete and specific websites we want them to access potentially. We've got Express, so how your children are going to express their learning. This is very much sort of pinpointed around JIT, which we have looked at in previous webinars. We are going to have a look at a few more elements of JIT today. And j2e5, so I am going to show you how to create an activity using j2e5. Exchange, so very much around your online communication. This will pivot around your learning conversations and J2 message. Again, we're going to look at those today. Evaluation, a very, very important part of our learning. We all know that as teachers. So J2 PDF, kind of around creating templates and structuring that learning for your students so they have that self-evaluation time. And learning conversations, so you've got your teacher to child evaluation. So we can have conversations about what have you learned and how are you going to develop that further. And finally, Exhibit. We're going to have a quick look at j2webby and how you can publish stuff to your class blog at the click of a button. So, without further ado, we're going to have a think about a unit of work and how we might deliver that over a half term or a term or whatever the time frame is for you and your class. So what I've done in this session, similar to previous webinars, I've chosen a popular topic that might be taught in Key Stage 1, which is World War II. And I have pivoted around this task here, which is a SEER task. Famous people in history, and I've actually tailored it a little bit to be more sort of a famous time in history. So this is a digital storytelling presenting activity. So we'll be focusing on that kind of side of things, so very much the writing and creating presentations and research. It will be covering these 4 E's. So we've got Explore 1, so your research side of things, Express, Evaluate and Exhibit. And this is very much geared towards level 2 and 3. So that will be sort of Key Stage 1 specifically. The tools that we're going to be using are, we're going to be having a think about structuring a plan session for your students using J2 PDF. They're going to be creating some content in JIT Paint and JIT Animate. They're going to be wrapping all that content up in J2E5. We're going to be making it very, very clear about the activities we want our students to complete using J2 Homework. And then the children are going to publish their content straight to the class blog using j2webby. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to structure that learning environment, that online learning environment for my students. And I'm going to do that in a variety of different ways. So the very first thing that I'm going to do is I want my students to access certain documents that I already have as a teacher. So I want to add those in, I want to share them. Okay, so that's really quick and easy. And we can do that through our My Files area, which is here. So every user will have in My Files, and it is always the first tile as they log in. So it's always in the same place. When we open up our My Files, this is where all your content is stored, and it's stored in a reverse chronological order. So the most recent pieces of work will come up at the top. And the same is true for your pupils as well. So just to show you, this is Harry's account. Harry's one of my students in my class. You can see here, he's got his My Files as well. You can click in it and this will save all of the content that he's created. Now, as a teacher, I can access all of my pupil files here through the pupil files area, which we'll talk about in a second. Now, I want to add in some documents and share them with my students. So I've got my hard drive here ready to go. Now, what's really nice about My Files is it pulls the structure from wherever you're importing from. So just to give you some context, what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight all of these. I'm going to use all of them apart from Red Riding Hood. And I'm just going to drag these in. Now, what it will do, because I've already got a folder in there, it will retain that folder structure. So I'm not going to need to put those, it's a folder full of images. I'm not going to need to put that folder, all those images back into that folder once it's been imported. So we can drag that onto the Dropbox there. As soon as I let go, that will add it in. It's going to ask me, do I want to continue? I'm going to say yes. There we go. Now, depending on the file size, depends how long it will take. So if you are uploading bigger videos, maybe leave a little bit of extra time there. And you can see it's retained that folder structure. So within that are the images that I want my students to use in a second. So we can go into that folder. There we go. And I can always drag other things into that folder. To drag things into folders, we just drag, hover over the folder and just drop it in. I'm not going to do that for that one. Now, in terms of sharing content with our students, I want them to use these images in the project later. So all I need to do, you can see as I hover over the files, I've got my green eye and my speech bubble. I'm going to click on that green eye and I'm going to click share. That brings up my share screen. I won't worry too much about this top bit. This box here is going to be really important. So we can add in a name or an email, so we can share via email if we want to. Or we can use this drop down menu, so the double arrows. If we press that, we've got loads of different options now. So I can share my whole school. Great if you're an SLT, maybe you want to showcase a newsletter. I can share with my registration class. Now, every user is part of one registration class. You can be part of multiple teaching groups, but only one registration class. Now, this structure, this registration class structure, as I said earlier, is preset by C2K. So if your children are in the wrong class, you'll need to go to the C2K help desk for them to move them around. Okay. Our teaching groups, so we can set up smaller teaching groups, and that's done through J2 dashboard if you need to. So things like maybe your SEND group, or maybe your table groups within your classroom, your intervention groups, you can set up groups for anything. Chess club if you wanted to. We can share with an individual user. So these will be your most commonly used users, or you can search within your school and you can share with other registration classes. Now I'm going to share that with my class. Let's do that again. There we go. Now, as soon as I've added that, they will be able to access that until I press that X. So if I wanted to remove permission at a later date, I just press that X and it takes that permission away. Now, my students will access that when they log in. They can access that through their shared files area here. They have a number of different folders. So depending on how it's been shared, I shared that as class 1, so it'll be in that folder. Now, sometimes that's a bit confusing for the little ones. So what we can do is just tick this list files. There's that folder and there's all those images. So really simple and easy. Now, I want my students to access this info sheet. So I'm going to do the same with this one. My drop down menu and share with my class. And there we go, that's shared. And I know it's shared because I've got those 3 heads there. You can see that's different to the others. So I can see at a glance which files I've shared already. I'm going to share this one as well, just very quickly. There we go. Right. Now, sometimes it's not very obvious with the shared files, and it can be a bit of a clunky process, especially with the younger students. So we can make this a little bit more obvious for our students. And what I mean by that is we can create a tile that links directly to a website or a piece of work. So this info document, I want it very obviously on the Launchpad here. So I'm going to do that by clicking on this plus here, and I'm going to add a tile. So I'm going to make a whole new tile. I'm going to title it with info document. There we go. And it asks for a URL. Now, if I was using a website, I'd just copy and paste that from the website. Because this is already in my files, what I can do is I can link to that particular document. Now, it's very important at this point that we make sure that whoever we're adding the tile for, so if it was my whole class, we need to make sure that the file is shared and the tile is shared. So they both need to be shared. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this link at the bottom. So every file that you add will have its own specific URL, so its own link. So you could, if you wanted to, share that with anyone in school or out of school. Then I'm going to go back to my Launchpad and I'm going to paste that URL in there. And that's all I need to do. Now I could add a thumbnail if I wanted to, if I've got a screenshot of that particular document. I can tag it against different age groups. I can change the colour. So maybe you wanted to have reference documents one colour or literacy documents one colour. It's entirely up to you. And then we press plus. Now that's added that into my files on my Launchpad, sorry. As I said earlier, you need to make sure that the file is shared and the tile is shared. So to share the tile, all we do is press this button here. It says click for sharing when we hover over it. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to share that with our class, and that shares instantaneously. So you'll know it's shared because it's got those green heads there. Okay, you can see this one's only got grey. So now my students, if I go back to my Harry's account, if I refresh his page, there's that link. Okay, we can click on that and that takes us directly to that information page. So he hasn't got to find it in his shared files. He hasn't got to click in, shared files and then find the file itself, which just gives them, extra excuses to why they haven't read it. So this can just make it that little bit more obvious. Very useful for younger students, very useful for students with SEND as well. You can create folders of tiles as well. So it might be that you've got literacy week 2, you can create a folder and put lots and lots of different tiles for them to refer to. So there are lots of options there. Now, what I want to do is I want to create a template for my students because what they're going to be creating is a presentation. So I've got a sort of very much scaffolded template for them. And that template is already added in. It was part of the files that I've dragged in, and it's this here. So it's very simple. It's just a storyboard, just something that I made in Microsoft Word, and then I exported as a PDF. Now, PDFs are brilliant. Generally, they would have been the type of thing that I would have created and then printed out first thing in the morning. As soon as I got into school, printed out 30 copies so my kids could fill this out during class time. Now, this is a brilliant strategy if you're doing it in person. If you're trying to be a bit more digital, or if you're doing this as a homework, or maybe you're still doing remote learning, you might have students that are off having tested positive for COVID, whatever it is that you're experiencing. You can make this into a digital version of that, because at the moment this is uneditable. I can't click anywhere, I can't add any content in, but we can make it editable. So we're going to do that by using j2e PDF, which is here. So this can be used with your existing worksheets. So it might be a maths worksheet, it might be a word search, it might be something that you do with your topic every year. As long as there's a PDF, you can do this. Okay. So if I wanted to, I could drag that PDF straight onto this sheet here and it would upload it. Now, because I've already uploaded it into my files, I can click Open PDF. I've got my various different documents here. There's my plan. If I click Plan and Add, that's going to add that onto a j2e5 file. So it's basically a background in j2e5. Now, because my PDF is landscape and my j2e5 file is portrait, that's why this looks like it's quite squished at the bottom. But it's very easy to change our size of our PDFs but we need to unlock it first and lock it again. So the first thing I need to do is I'm going to change the orientation of my page. There we go. That's still stitched as a background. So what I can do is I can double click my PDF at the bottom, and I'm going to click unlock here. Once I've clicked that, I can click my page. Now I can move that PDF around anywhere. Now this is really useful maybe if you've got a success criteria. It might be a checklist for your students. So you can resize this and maybe put it very small in the corner. So that might be a reference just for certain students, or a structure, or something that there isn't a huge part of the activity. It might just be a supporting part. Now for us, this activity is the whole activity, and I want to make it as big as the screen. So I can resize that as much as I want. Okay. Once I've positioned it how I want it, I just need to make sure that I lock it again in place. So what it means is I can click anywhere now, and my students, they can add whatever they want on top. So I've created this plan for my students, this template. I can add additional stuff if I wanted to. I could add in word lists. I'm going to add in some audio instructions. So I'm going to press on this multimedia tab up here. I'm going to go to record sound. I'm just going to record some instructions. Hi class, I want you to create a storyboard about your presentation. So have a plan for each slide of your presentation. Obviously, I would probably have a longer instruction for my students, but that's just to give you an idea. We can click add to page, and there's our sound button there. We can place it wherever we want. So put it over here. And there we go. Once you've done that, obviously you can put in as much as you want. I'm going to save that for my students. I'm going to say World War II presentation plan. There we go. Now that's saved that into my files. If we go back to my files, there's my presentation plan. But we want to share it with our students. So we want them to access it. So we have to share it. Now I could do that through my files with the green eye, but what's really nice in j2e5 and j2 PDF is we can share it within that document. So you don't then have to go somewhere else to share it. We're going to do exactly the same thing as we have done. We're going to use the drop-down menu, and I'm going to share that with my class. So they can access that at the moment through shared files. Okay, so the same as they did with those images earlier. But the other tool that we have for you to use is j2 homework. So this is very good at wrapping around all of the content that you want them to create. It might be that you want them to watch a video on YouTube and then answer questions on a document. It might be that you want them to read an info sheet like we've set, and then complete a presentation plan, which is what we're going to do. Okay, so you can tie in lots of different activities in the same wraparound activity. So what we're going to do, I'm going to leave that open for now. I'm going to go to j2 homework, which is here. And you can see I've already got some homework that I've set for my students. So to add homework, we're going to click assign homework here. We're going to title it, so I'm going to say World War II presentation plan. There we go. So I'm going to say read the info document, and then complete your plan. Okay. What I'm first of all going to do is I am going to add in the link for that info document that we've set, which is in my files. So I'm going to go here. There's our info sheet. So remember, I've got a link to every file, so I can copy that link there. And I can go back to my homework and paste that in there. So there's the link to the info sheet. Then I want them to complete the plan as their homework. So I'm going to paste the URL to the actual plan. Okay, so I'm going to go share. And I'm going to go copy, then back to my homework, and I'm going to paste that in that URL, which is there. I can set a due date and a schedule date. So the schedule date is when it appears to my students. The due date is when they should complete it by. You need to assign it. So we're going to assign that to class 1. You've also got individual users, and I could record some audio if I wanted to. And then I'm going to assign that homework. So there we go. So there's my homework. So what my students will find is it's just a nice, easy, accessible outline of what I expect them to do. So what they would do is they'd log in. This is Harry's account. Again, we can see Harry on the right-hand side. They go to j2 homework, and there is his homework that I've just set. Now, I've noticed that someone has asked me a question in the chat. If you could direct that at Paul, because I can't read the messages whilst I'm presenting, Paul will be able to answer any questions that you have as we go along. So sorry if I'm not answering your question. Right, back to it. So this is the presentation plan. So Harry knows that he can read the info document. He can click that. He can take some information from that. He can go to his homework here. There's his presentation plan. So this is his presentation. So he could say slide 1, the blitz. Okay. He can drag in some photos. So if we click photos here, he's got his access to his My Files on the right-hand side. He can search. So he could search for the blitz. Now that's a Google search and it passes through a safe search. So you don't want to worry about nasty surprises. He can also access shared files. Now there are those photos that I've already shared as a teacher. So he's got access to those straight away. So we can drag in this image of the London Underground during the Blitz. And there we go. He could record some audio if he wanted to. He can change all sorts of things like the size of his text or the font, the colour. He can add in shapes and pictures. Now, once he's done that, he just clicks save. And there we go. So that saves into his My Files. And he has to make sure that he marks that as complete. And there we go. It removes it from his homework. So as a teacher, what will happen is if I go back to homework, and if I open that up, I can keep track of who's done what and when. You can see this completed by box has appeared now. I can see Harry's completed that. I can see when Harry's completed that. I've also got a link directly to his files. So when I click that, it's taken me into his pupil files, and we talked about this earlier. This will link into the whole of Harry's My Files, so I can always see what he's doing at any one time. Now, this is true for all staff, so if you're maybe middle management using ICT lead, you can keep a check on all of your students and all their work. I can click in this piece of work, and we can see there's those changes that Harry's made. Very good so far. And we can also respond to that. We can comment on that work using this speech bubble here. So this is a learning conversation. So you can talk to Harry. You could say that's a great start. What about slide 2? And there we go. And Harry will get a comment on his piece of work in his My Files. It shows up in red, so he knows he needs to attend to it. And he can comment back as well. He could record some audio, maybe if he's got some questions. He could ask for clarification. You could ask maybe, I don't know, 2 stars and a wish for assessment, anything that you want to, whichever format that you're going with in terms of assessment at school. So that's a very quick rundown of pupil files and homework, j2 PDF. What we're going to do is we're going to focus on Express now. We're going to do a couple of different things that are quite nice little treats. So we're going to use JIT, and I'm going to use it as Harry to give you an idea, which is here. So the first thing we're going to do, we have looked at a lot of JIT in the other webinars. So we have already covered write, chart, pictogram and mix. Those have been in the introductory and the foundation stage webinars. So please have a look at those if you want some more information. But we're going to have a quick look at Paint. And they all open up very, very similar. So they will all ask you for a template background. We're going to bypass this. We're going to go straight to transparent. So what we're going to do is we're going to create our students as a character that they can use in animations, that they can use in ebooks or presentations. So this is something that I used to do in my class and they loved it. But the software that I used to use was not as easy as this one. So take it from experience. We're going to use the transparent background, so I'm going to click that background. Now, what I would have done prior to delivering this as a lesson is I would have maybe done a lesson on camera skills for my students, and I would have gotten them to take photographs of themselves or of their peers, full photograph. And you can do that if you're using this with a tablet. You could use the camera option straight away. So when we use the camera, it'll take photographs and it'll upload straight into your students' account, so they don't need to take it on a camera and then move it over from the hard drive onto the My Files. They can do it all in one place. So that's a real time saver there. So what we're going to do is we're going to load that picture, that, use your imagination, that we've just taken. And I've already shared it through my shared file. So you can see there's my girl standing. So here's a picture they took of each other. Now, a pro tip for this is to make sure that you have a single colour background or a blank background. So if you can take a photo of them in front of a whiteboard maybe, or a green screen, or just a plain wall, it makes this activity a whole lot easier. So we're going to make that girl slightly bigger so it kind of fills the screen. There we go. And then I'm just going to click where I want to lay her. And there we go. I'm going to lay it right in the middle of the screen. Now we need to remove that background so that all that white needs to go. There's two ways we can do this. We can click on the eraser button here. So that will leave it as a paintbrush. So we could, if we wanted to, get our students to remove it all by hand. Now the other options, we can use eraser and the fill tool. We can just click and it will take that whole background away. There we go, let's take the white. So that's why I said it's easier if you've got a blank background. Once they're done with that, they can save that as a working file. Now what that will do is it will save the painted picture itself, but we want to save her as a character in herself. I'm going to do that by clicking on this button that says Save as Stamp. And there we go. So once that's done, it will just save her in the middle and none of the background. So to put that into context and why that will be useful, we're going to create an animation. So we're going to go to Animate at the top. And we're going to add in a picture background. So we're going to use one of those Blitz pictures that we've saved. So there we go. Let's pop her on a train evacuating. Okay. Now the other thing we can do, just do this quickly, is we can add some effects to that picture. Now this is really nice as part of your art and design units that SIA do, or if you're doing art and design and you want to add some effects to photographs, or talk about digital photography, this is a really nice activity to do. So what we can do is we can open up the camera. Now it's going to ask me to allow, and it won't let me because I'm streaming, but at that point it would normally open up your front-facing camera. So you can edit photos taken straight in, but we're going to upload a photo. I'm going to upload a little girl. As soon as I click on, she's added onto that page. We can add any of these effects here. I'm going to add a grayscale, and then I'm going to add some sepia over the top. So we've got sepia down here. Now what's nice about sepia is we can change how strong that sepia is. So we can mix kind of the grayscale and the sepia together to make it look like an oldie worldy kind of photograph. Once you're done adding those effects, all we do is save that picture, and that's going to save that into their My Files. Okay. So that's another nice activity to do with your students. So now when I go to JIT, I can add in my grayed out character. So my students can then use that, so they can go to their My Files, and there she is. There's the original, there's the edited version, and she's in kind of a nice black and white. So we can make her smaller, so she's a very similar size to the evacuees. We're going to lay her, we might have her walking towards the train, for example. So animation is very quick and easy to do. It's a brilliant way of linking in with your literacy. You can get your students to plan this out. You could get them to research facts. They could create a script to add into your animation. Okay, and all they have to do is just use these three buttons here, basically. So this one will delete the frame. This one will copy the frame, the background, but not the character. This will copy everything that's in that frame. So it'll make sense in a second. So we're going to start with her here, and we're just going to click where we want her to stand. Okay. Then the idea is we're going to make very, very small movements in each frame to make her look like she's moving. So to do that, we're just going to press this green plus here. And you probably can't see it. I haven't planned this very well in that you can't see the onion skin, but you can see there's a little ghostly girl there. Now what that will do, it's called onion skinning. It is a genuine animation tactic. It shows us where she was in the last frame, so we can move her slightly to the left, and then we're going to follow that process again and again. So I'm just going to do this very quickly. And there we go. So we keep adding frames and we keep moving her slightly. So to show you what that looks like, we can press play, and there we go. She moves along. Now, the other thing that I always like to do for my students is tying it into literacy is to create speech bubbles. So they could research facts to put in the speech bubble. So you've got your literacy, you've got your explore side of the curriculum, you've got your reading. It ties in really, really nicely. So what we can do is we can add in a speech bubble. So there's a whole library of speech bubbles. There's a whole library for most things in here. Okay, so you can add characters that link to any topic. Really useful. The speech bubbles, you can have different speech bubbles, got different sizes, and they could then add in a fact. So we could say children were evacuated from cities. Okay. Now that will add that into that speech bubble. We can make that bigger or smaller. And we can lay it wherever we want. We can flip it around as well. No, we'll keep it that way. There we go. And there we go. Now what I would do at this point is I would keep that speech bubble very, very still. And we're going to do that by using this red plus. Now that would give the viewer long enough to be able to read that particular fact. So now when we play it, she moves, she walks along, and then you've got that fact, but it's still relevant. Okay. So you could have multiple different speech bubbles. You can have multiple different characters. They could talk to each other, could have conversations. There's lots and lots of different uses for this. Now, what I would get your students to do is to press the save button here. Now, what that will do is it saves it as a working document. So that means your students can come back and add more frames. They don't have to do this all in one lesson, because animation does take a long time if you want it done properly. So this is good where you can do it, a couple of lessons, maybe over a couple of weeks. Once they have completed that animation, you need to get them to export the animation. I'm going to do that by saving as a GIF. So that will save just the animation on its own. Now it's going to stitch all the frames together. So the more frames there are in this, the longer this process takes. So just be aware and just leave that little bit of extra time at the end of the lesson if they are exporting. Sometimes it can take 5 or 10 minutes for that to happen. So what will happen is in my files, you can see there's the working document. So they can click that and go back and do any editing that they need to do. And here is the final GIF. So this is the finished product. Okay. So we can zoom in on that if we want to. Now, the other thing we can do for our students is we can generate QR codes. So I can do this as a pupil or as a teacher. So a QR code there on the green eye. I'm going to click publish. So that means that anyone can now scan that particular document. Let me just scan this. I'm going to hope that it works because I've generated this as a pupil. No, I need to do that as a teacher. So if I go back to my teacher account, if I go to my pupil files, go to my list files, there's my student's animation. I'm going to generate that QR code again. I can download it. I'm going to try and scan it again this time. It might be because I'm not logged in. And it's not scanning it at all now. Right, my phone's decided to not work. So what you'll be able to do is print that out and put it as evidence in a student piece of a student workbook. Maybe this was a literacy book or a history activity. So you have that as evidence, even though it's not a printable piece of work. So that is JIT. Very much a very, very popular Key Stage 1 content creation site. Please have a look. If you are sort of in Key Stage 1, you can access any of these. And what's nice is you can flip between the two or three tabs and do work at the same time. If they haven't saved it and they press X, it will prompt them to save it as well. So it is quite difficult for them to lose any work that they have created. Okay, so that is JIT. The other thing that I haven't pointed out that I probably should, I keep doing that, is the help tile here. Now we haven't got enough time to go through all of the content that's relevant to Key Stage 1, especially things like JIT. So if I haven't covered something and you really want to know how it works, just search for it here. So look, for example, JIT paint or JIT mix. And there will be documents that are available for you to have a look. So you can have a look at videos, and there's also articles. So there's lots of help content there. And we're adding to it all the time. Right, back to my plan. So what we're going to do now is we're going to get our kids to create a j2e 5 file for their presentation. Okay. Now, j2e 5 is like a blank piece of paper, a digital blank piece of paper. So your kids can do whatever they want. So this could be a scrapbook plan. It could be a maths activity. It could be a plan for a story, whatever they want to use it for. It has lots of accessibility settings already sort of wrapped into it, which is really nice. Now what we're going to do is we're going to get Harry to create a World War II presentation. So along the bottom, he's got his background settings. So he can add in a background paper if you wanted to. So there's some nice backgrounds. He can also change the colour, so just a flat colour if you wanted to. So you can click here and then change the colour. So we could go from like a pale green. Now this is really useful if you're making maybe activities for students with dyslexia. So you can change the background colour, you can change the font colour so you don't have that jarring kind of black and white. That's always a good thing to do. Your students can click anywhere and they can type. So we could say World War II. They can double click that text and they can expand it. So they haven't got to worry about formatting and clicking certain places. And you know, Word can be quite tricky for some of your younger students. They can move this around as well really easily. They can tilt it on its side. So they can make their presentations look really exciting. The other thing they can do is they can add in some pictures. So we can add, maybe there's my character, so we'll add her in. So, you know, she could be a staple in their presentations, okay? Again, you've got speech bubbles available in the shapes library. So we can click here, got all your regular and irregular shapes. We've got speech bubbles down here. We can click on that speech bubble. We can change which direction it goes in. We can change the size. We can also fill it. Okay, you can fill with different colours if you wanted to, so you can maybe make it grey instead. We can also click and type, so we could say World War II happened between, would help if I could type properly, between 1939 to 45. So we can double click and we can drag that into that speech bubble. Again, we can make that bigger or smaller if we wanted to. Change the font. Now we've got some nice fonts, especially Lexend. So this is a really nice font that is specifically designed for students with dyslexia, just because of the weighting of the font and the spacing. So that's always useful if you have students with additional needs. Your students can add in audio if they want to, and they can link that to the text. So we can double click this text here. And we can go up to record. We could say record sound. And we can record them saying this script. So this could be a script that they've written. This could be linking to a photograph. Maybe they've handwritten a script and they just want to link it to a photograph, so it's a talking ebook. So you have lots of different options here. So I'm going to click record. World War II happened between 1939 and 45. And you can see there it says add to selection. So previously when we recorded audio, it was add to page, and that will add as a button. So that will record and link to that particular object or text. So when we go to view now, that will play that sound. World War II happened between 1939 and 45. And it will require a trigger. So that's brilliant, okay? The other thing we can do is we can add in our animation. Now this is a little trickier, so this would be more sort of your upper key stage 1, maybe lower key stage 2, because we need to embed it. Now this process may change soon. We are hoping to add so that we can just add animations in, but at the moment this is how you do it. So your students would need to go to J2 Launch and go to their My Files. They go to their animation, click the green eye and go to share. So everything's familiar so far. Then what they need to do is go to embed, and they're going to grab this embed code. So they're going to click and they're going to copy, and then they're going to go back to their presentation. And then they're going to go up to the multimedia button here and click video sound embed. And then all they're going to do is just right click and paste that. Now that can be done with YouTube videos as well, or any video that's in your My Files, or any sort of video file sharing site that has the embed code. Okay, so that's a good process to teach children. And then we can click OK, and there's that animation that we've created. So they've added lots of different content into their presentation. Now the last thing we can do is we can add in a photo. So again, we could look in My Files. Let's do a Google search. So let's go for the Blitz. Now this will bring up child-friendly images. And in fact, I'm going to put this image on a new page. I'm going to click new page. And there we go. Let's pull this image here. And we're just going to expand that. So you can see we can change the size of the picture. We can also crop that picture really quickly and easily just by sort of using the left-hand side or the right-hand side or the bottom. So we can crop things quickly. But we can change this photograph into a jigsaw. Now kids love this effect. They absolutely love it. So you can click convert to jigsaw, and there we go. That is now a jigsaw that is fully interactive. So your students, let's click on that again. They can also add in things like scatter on load, scatter button, solve button, hint button. They can change the number of pieces. So when they go to their presentation, they've got their scatter. They can move that around. The buttons will click together whether they're in the right place. And there we go. Now, the last thing your students can do with their presentation is they can publish it through j2e, which is here. So this will publish to your class website, your blog site through j2e. They can choose which blog they publish it to. There is a moderation process involved, so any student that pushes anything has to be authorized by a teacher. So as a teacher, you would moderate that through the moderate button here. You can see we've got post awaiting moderation from class 4, class 1. We can see which files need moderating. So I'm going to click on class 1. And that's going to take me to the back end of j2e. So the one that we want to look at today is this one, the most recent one, World War II. We can preview that, see what it looks like. So this is what it would look like published. You can see the animation works, the audio works. World War II happened between 1939 and the jigsaw works as well, so we can move that around. So once we're happy with that, we've checked it, there's no swear words, there's no spelling mistakes, whatever, we can publish that. Now we can bin it as well, so if it was inappropriate, if it wasn't to a high standard, you can bin that. What that means is it'll bin the submission, it won't bin the file. So you don't have to worry, okay? So they can go away, you can offer some feedback and say, right, we'll try again and then submit it again later. What they will have is, when we go to j2e, each class will have their own blog site. So here's class 1. There's that submission that we've just had. We can view the post, we can see who's posted it, we can view, it's interactive, students can comment on it, you can comment on it. Any student comments will need to be moderated as well, so you have that safety net in case you need it. So that is j2e. So that, very quickly, is all of those tools there. Now, the other two tools that I promised to show you are j2 Message and games-based learning in j2 Blast. So j2 Message is an online messaging service. It's instant messaging, basically. Some schools love it, some schools hate it. I think it is a particularly useful teaching tool. So when I used to teach e-safety, it was always very much around what not to do online. And it was very difficult to showcase what to do because there's no student-friendly, appropriate online communication software that you can use with students without having to, create templates and all sorts. So this works really, really well. So you've got your classes here, your registration classes and your teaching classes. Each class will have their own discussion board. You've also got your school discussion board. Now only teachers can post into that. You've also got individual, so you can contact students individually if you wanted to. Now students cannot contact each other. You don't need to worry about that. And you can restrict or open up your discussion boards as much as you need to. So we can, for example, switch off pupil comments. So this would be, if I was to write a message here, a completely one-way message board. So this would just be like me having, doing an announcement at the front of the class and the class staying silent. Now what I can do is I can allow pupil messages on now. So what that will mean is I can create a message and my students can respond, but only I see that response. So a real life version would be me making an announcement, sitting at my desk and students coming and having one-to-one conversations with me. The other thing I can do is I can open that up completely. So I can unlock that message board. So that means you've got a whole class discussion going on. Students can see other students' comments and it is a very good teaching tool. So you could do a lesson on how to compose emails and they each write an email to you. You could pretend to be someone, maybe, I don't know, the big bad wolf in a Little Red Riding Hood and they have to respond. So it is quite a nice tool. The other thing you can do is you can press this button and it will show you the deleted buttons or the deleted messages. So even if a student has deleted messages, you can still access those. And that, again, is a really important teaching tool. Now, j2 Blast is here. Now, I haven't got time because I've only got 1 minute left. But you can set your own spelling lists. So we've got Times Table Blast and Spell Blast. They can go up against students around the world. You have your world leaderboard, school leaderboard, class leaderboard. They get points for each correct answer. But you can have a practice area and you can set your own spelling tests. So that's really nice. And you can find, I've gone to the wrong area. You can find a help document in the help tool. So you could say spelling. Set your own spelling list with Spell Blast. So there is a whole article on how you can do that and it showcases exactly where you need to click and how you do that. Okay. Right, we also have accessibility tools. There is text to speech in j2e5, word lists in j2e5, and we've also got speech to text coming. Now, I have spent a lot of time showcasing how to do all of these in the SEN webinar, which was on a couple of weeks ago, which is available on our webinar page. So please have a look at that if that's something that's suitable for your students. Now I'm rounding up the webinar now, so if you have got any questions, you can either write them in the chat or you can unmute in a second and ask me in person. But in terms of our contacting us, if you have any issues, technical or education-wise, please just email us at support@j2e.com. This is our website here. And we're also on Twitter. We're getting quite a few Northern Ireland schools that are tweeting us. So if you do have a school Twitter account, please feel free to tag us. If you're doing some work with Just2Easy, if you're trying things with your kids, we love to retweet work. And it's actually a really nice place to go and magpie ideas for your students. If you're thinking of how can I use Just2Easy with my students, we always showcase some really good activities. And we're also on Facebook, so have a look. Just another gentle reminder, we are recording all of these introductory webinars and they can be accessed here, just2easy.com/news/webinars C2K. And as I said, we have covered a lot of the content already in the introductory, the foundation and the SEN webinar. So please have a look at those if you get a chance, or book on the ones that we've got coming up. And that is all done. So have we got any questions? Would anybody like to unmute and ask me anything? Put me on the spot. I'm more than happy to answer anything that you might have. I have got some lovely feedback. Thank you very much. I do love doing these sessions, and it's always nice when we have lots of lovely people turning up for them. So Paul, did we cover the deleting a post from the class blog in j2e?
Yes.
You've covered that. Brilliant. Okay.
Yeah, got that one done.
Fab.
And then you arrived there about 15 minutes later, so.
That's brilliant. Right. Well, it looks like we haven't got any questions, and I don't think anybody's brave enough to unmute. But thank you ever so much for joining us. We love doing these sessions, and they wouldn't be half as good if you didn't turn up for them. So I am off next week. But Paul and my colleague Alistair are going to be taking on the Key Stage 2. So if you're bored of listening to my voice droning on for an hour, we will be having some different voices taking over. So please, if you haven't booked on for Key Stage 2, if you've got colleagues that you know would find it useful, point them in that direction. And thank you for giving up your time. So have a lovely evening. And we will see you again very soon. Okay, thank you. Bye.